union activist now for well over 30 years. Actually started as an activist in NALGO, which is one of the predecessor unions to UNISON. I've also worked as an organiser for the PCS, currently employed by the City of Wolverhampton branch of UNISON, to deal with the workers in the private sector. As a lot of you will know, there's no facility time granted for people that are employed by the local authority to actually do work. So that's why I'm employed to do that. It's relevant in a way when I actually started doing union work to the discussion that we're having. When I was an activist in Dudley, when I first started, I think Dudley had probably got really about 3 employers that the branch dealt with. There was the local authority, which was by far the biggest, and I think it was Dudley College and Stourbridge College were the places that we dealt with. So we'd got, for those of you who may have been in local government at that time, we'd got the Purple Book, we'd got centralised personnel departments. So being a rep in those times was actually a lot easier than it became. I don't know how many workplaces we got by the time that I left Dudley, but to just give you an idea of what's happening in the private sector now and why organising is becoming so problematic. I've been doing this job at Wolverhampton for about 18 months. When I first started, I asked whether they could give me a breakdown of the number of members in the private sector and the number of workplaces. When it came back, it said we'd got just over 200 workplaces and just over 500 members in those workplaces. So it becomes clear from the start how difficult organising is, because we've got a lot of the workplaces, we've got 1 or 2 members in. Those employers, as a general rule, and I can't think of any that do, they will not recognise trade unions. I very often have a fight to actually get into the places when I need to, even where there's a legal right for me to be there. So as privatisations happened, organising has become more increasingly difficult compared to what it used to be. This has become even more problematic with migrant workers now entering the particularly the care sector to the extent that they are. I'm only discussing here my experience of it, and the migrant workers that I'm particularly talking about, and not the ones that are over here on skilled worker visas, but the ones that are over here on health and care visas. So they're not classed as skilled workers, and I think that as well gives you a flavour of how these people are actually seen in the workplaces. They're seen as unskilled work. The number of migrant workers, and this is anecdotal from Wolverhampton, but the number of migrant workers has increased a lot in the last 12 months, I would say. And those of you in union branches, the numbers may not sound a huge amount, but they are in terms of what's the normal recruitment. We're picking up between 60 and 80 migrant workers a month now in Wolverhampton. To get a visa to come over here and work in the care sector, they have to find an employer to sponsor them that's on an approved list for the Home Office. They have to have a minimum level of personal savings, and they've got no recourse to public public funds. What I'm finding in my experience of actually trying to represent migrant workers is that the environment they're facing with a lot of employers in Wolverhampton, and I've got no doubt that Wolverhampton is not unique here. They must be facing this all over the country. Is that the environment is becoming increasingly hostile. A lot of the employers are, for want of a better word, totally unscrupulous. But that's not surprising. I was talking to one of the migrant workers a few weeks ago, and I actually said to him, "What do you think the point of your organisation is?" And he said, "To provide care to people." And I said, "No, it isn't. The point of your organisation is to make profits for the owners or the shareholders." And that's why the employers are becoming increasingly unscrupulous in how they deal with these people. It's about the profit. The environment that they're in is very often, if they try and raise any issues that they've got, they will be faced with the threat to withdraw their sponsorship. There's very often some what appear to me to be really dodgy clauses in the contract, that they have to repay the employer for housing that the employer is apparently providing for them. And it all, to me, smacks of indentured labour in the 21st century, to be honest. Some examples of some of the things I've faced with people. Somebody I saw today, actually, he'd had his wage slip and it was £200 less than the month before. When he inquired why, they said, "Because you had an accident in the works company vehicle and it caused so much damage, and we're taking that money every month until we've cleared the £700 the damage that you've caused." Now, of course, my response to that is, well, if it's a company vehicle, it will be insured and they should get their money back through the insurance. And let me write to your employer and basically say, this is not on. One, you've got to provide an itemised pay slip with what the deductions are. His attitude was, "No, I don't want you to do anything, because the last person that raised a grievance with them, they sacked the day after." So there's a lot of fear. I mean, these employers very often don't follow any sort of procedures at all. They will just sack somebody for the sake of sacking them. And what that's actually done is created a climate of fear where these people, yes, they are being mistreated, yes, they are being exploited, but they're frightened of actually raising anything because they know what the consequences of that will be. Now, that's bad for all workers in the private sector. This attitude. Of course, the main problem there for all workers is that you've got to be employed by an employer for at least 2 years before you can actually have recourse to an employment tribunal. So, as I say, that's bad for all workers. But for migrant workers, it's even worse, because if they actually lose their job, they have then got 60 days to find a new approved sponsor to actually take them on. Or unless they could find a visa through another route, they would be deported. So I think all workers, not just in the private sector, but in the public sector, all workers are exploited. But I think the migrant workers, you can see that now they're actually being exploited to a different level. On a positive sense, they do seem, in general, keen to join trade unions, not just when they have a problem, but as soon as they become employed, they do appear to be joining unions. However, the flip side of that is what I've just talked about, with the problems of actually organising them, and if they've got less than 2 years employment, how we actually do anything for them. So we can only in a lot of senses offer a service to them, and even at times that even that service is not as good as I would like it to be because of that 2-year rule. One of the when I explained the 2-year rule to one of the members that I was dealing with a couple of weeks ago, he said, I only came to this country because I was expecting British justice. Now, my answer to that was, well, you've just seen what British justice actually is. But I think some of them have got some sort of false idea of what it will be like when they actually come to this country. In terms of what we can do and in terms of solutions, UNISON have actually set up a migrant worker network so that at least migrant workers can start to actually get in touch and communicate with one another. They've also set up an immigration advice line, which is a good idea. I mean, I know my way around employment law, but a lot of the issues that are being raised amongst this particular group of workers is not just simply employment law. It may be immigration law, it may be housing law. So what the advice line actually do is, where it's necessary, is to refer migrant workers to the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants, who are perhaps better placed than the trade union sometimes to provide them with the advice that they need. What we need to do, I think, is in terms of organising, we need to start identifying the workplaces where we've got a high concentration of migrant workers. However, that's proving to be more difficult than we would think, because we can identify them where we think there may be immigrants, sometimes just by a person's name. However, we don't particularly just want to write to everybody that we think's got a name that sounds like an immigrant, because you may well find that when you do that, somebody says, well, no, actually, I've been born and bred in Wolverhampton, I've never been outside the Black Country. Or so what we're thinking of doing to actually get round that, because some of the issues do affect non-migrant workers as well, is to actually think about putting on events where we can invite all private sector workers, but then actually raise the issue of migrant workers through that event. I think that may help, but it doesn't really address the real problems that these people are facing. And I think the issues that we've got, they actually do need some sort of political solution as well. Now, if hopefully it will be a Labour government following the next general election, but do any of us actually think that an incoming Labour government would restore employment rights from day one? Because that's what these people actually need. They need to be able to come to a union, and for us to actually have the leverage of actually taking cases down a legal route. At the moment, the employers are smart enough to know that they can do anything up to 2 years, and there's very little that we can do. And also, and again, I would guess this is probably not going to happen, at least anytime soon, is a return to some sort of sectoral bargaining. Because then, obviously, if unions can start bargaining for particular sectors, then we've got some leverage there. So thanks for listening. I mean, I don't think I've particularly come up with any great ideas for organising. Hopefully what I've done is shown you how difficult organising has been amongst this group of workers. And of course, you can trace it all back to basically to privatisation and the erosion of trade union rights, because why should a worker have to wait 2 years before they acquire any legal rights to go to a tribunal? It's just obviously not fair. So I think those things need to change before we can make any real progress in this. But I think we as well, we do need to try and make some progress in terms of putting these people together in some form of a network, and as I say, actually trying to find out where we've got high concentrations of migrant workers. So obviously there we can concentrate on trying to organise those particular areas.